Good morning and welcome to my presentation of violence against women, a global concern through the lens of an education and developmental psychologist. The World Health Organisation's data suggests chronic and evidence concern of violence against women, particularly intimate partner violence and sexual violence, globally standing at 30%. 1 in 3 women aged 15 to 49 years have been in a relationship report that they have been subjected to physical or sexual violence by their intimate partner. The real figures of this global health problem of epidemic proportions requiring urgent action, as reported by WHO, acknowledges that there are significant stigmas attached to the correct reporting of domestic violence against women. In Australia, the 2012 Personal Safety Survey found that 80% of women who experience some type of violence by a current partner never reported this to police. How can we define multifaceted domestic violence against women? It has been defined by the UN as any act of gender-based violence that results in or is likely to result in physical, sexual, or mental harm or suffering to women. Violence against women is a broad and inclusive umbrella term that includes any threats or acts that result in harm, and these can include coercion or arbitrary deprivation of liberty, whether private or publicly occurring. Education and developmental psychologists specialise in evidence-based development and educational approaches to the well-being of people across the lifespan, fostering cognitive, social and emotional learning, connectedness and social support in individual and group development. Domestic violence is the leading cause of morbidity and mortality against women of childbearing age. The main reason for this morbidity and mortality is the mental health impact domestic violence is responsible for. When individuals require help in mental health settings, they present with mental health issues such as depression, anxiety, insomnia, suicidal ideation, and post-traumatic stress disorder. Many of these morbidities are linked to underlying abuse and domestic violence that, as we have reported on, is not investigated or treated, potentially because of fear and the shame associated with the power inequity between men and women. The International Violence Against Women Survey, conducted in 2002 and 3, and the 2012 Bureau of Statistics Personal Safety Service provide us with details of the risk factors that influence violence in Australia, as listed on this slide. These surveys suggest that there is a relationship between the experience of violence as a child and the subsequent potentiality of victimisation as an adult, and that it is 1.5 times more likely of abuse as an adult if you have experienced child abuse. One of the strongest risk factors of all is of intimate partner physical abuse, again evidenced by the International Violence Against Women Survey, was the abuse of alcohol and drugs. Male perpetrators inflicted abuse against their partners more frequently, with more serious injuries being sustained, and there was also a greater risk for domestic violence in Indigenous communities. 44% of intimate partner homicides were alcohol related. The Australian Institute of Health and Welfare reported in 2018 some of the reasons why much domestic violence goes unreported and how to combat this lack of reporting. Developing the strategies, processes and programs to enable avenues to change referrals to health professionals could dramatically change the statistics, and working with women over a period of time fostering cognitive, social and emotional learning. This has been effective through implementing CBT, which I'll address a little bit later. The Bureau of Statistics reported on who the victims of domestic violence told first about an incident. This graph strongly illustrates that friends and family are the strongest supports for victims of domestic violence. This graph also acknowledges, however, that it is only a representation of those who sought help. It reflects the pathways to see a psychologist, and perhaps these need improvement so that greater use of this resource is sought by women who would benefit from their service. Other healthcare professionals and counsellor support care workers are only accessed by about 20 to 30% of victims who seek help and intervention. This is an area that could benefit from improvement to improve outcomes for women who are victims of domestic violence. An initiative by the New South Wales Government and Ministry of Health looked to intervene with vulnerable communities, support victims, hold perpetrators accountable and deliver evidence-based quality services to make victims safer and support their recovery. Intervention early lessens the impact of abuse. Priority areas for government in linking the reporting processes for domestic violence against women will enable for the streamlined and more effective reporting of violence as outlined in this document. Data is yet to be tabulated because it finishes in 2021, to see if these initiatives are working, if more women are being referred for help. Sustainability of interventions requires investment in organisational change in health systems working with our government. Services are available to address domestic violence against women. Cognitive behaviour therapy can alleviate emotional numbing, reduce PST, post-traumatic stress disorder and depression, while increasing self-esteem. Cognitive behavioural techniques can also reduce the symptoms of anxiety and stress. Psychoeducation allows the participants to understand the intergenerational cycle of domestic violence, as well as its different forms of expression. Understanding the cycle of domestic violence contributes to women's understanding their experiences, helping to minimise feelings of guilt as shame, as well as perceptions that they were responsible for the victimisation. It is these feelings of guilt and shame that are associated with symptoms of depression and anxiety, and an educational psychologist works to improve. Karatsias et al. Reports that cognitive behaviour therapy had a moderate to large effect on disturbances in relationships and large effects on affect dysregulation and negative self-concept in post-traumatic stress disorder symptoms. Advocacy for women is best described as educational empowerment strategies, referral to support services and safety planning. Another component of the intervention that may be associated with the reduction of symptoms was the promotion of the development of strategies for self-protection. These strategies have allowed women to perceive themselves with control over their current life situation, knowing their existing rights and services can aid in their protection. Eye movement desensitisation reprogramming shows significant reduction in post-traumatic stress disorder and anxiety symptoms of domestic violence sufferers, and shows better long-term effects than some other therapies. In conclusion, the UN's framework aimed to protect women through relationships, empowerment, services ensured, poverty reduction, enabling environments created, abuse prevented, and transforming attitudes and belief, set up a framework which include the psychosocial support and psychological interventions. Successful interventions prioritise the safety of women and are participatory and look at many of the risk factors through combining planned and work for each of our clients' needs.